So where I really wanted to start in the presentation though is what this is not, okay? So this is probably one of the biggest questions that I've gotten from people as Mike and I have started to socialize what we're trying to do here. And I don't know if this is exactly the right term, recruiter. I just kind of labeled all of these groups that. They are more than that, right? But you notice some of the logos up here, and like Mike and I just came from the Home Builders Academy and their open house. But the reason that I labeled them as recruiters is these various entities, I don't know if it's their primary mission, but a big part of their mission is to recruit people into the construction industry, right? They're going outside the industry and they're trying to get people to come into the construction industry. And then depending on which one it is, example being the Home Builders Association, if you go to the Home Builders Academy, they're trying to go find people outside the industry and bring them in. And then the other great part about what they're doing is they start to equip them with the tools and resources they need to be successful, right? You've got folks down there learning how to read tape measures and figuring out what level and plumb and square is for the first time ever. And then they're teaching them how to rope houses for electrical or the basics of framing and carpentry skills. And at the end of the day, what we were kind of validating for Jackson was, you know, the best part is this is a place where people can come and if they can commit, you know, whatever it was, the 9 weeks or of their life there to go through the program and make a commitment to something where they actually went and then, you know, that's what our industry needs and that's what our industry struggles with is, you know, folks that'll show up every day and bring a great attitude and bring a work ethic and that kind of thing. So this is vital to our industry's success. That speaks to the whole aging out of what our workforce is in residential, and bringing some new blood into this industry is exactly what we need. But we'll go into what we're going to do at RISE and what the difference is between what these organizations do and what we're geared up to do. So that's where I wanted to start. So I do think, and again, this is like 80-20, I've got some ideas about how this can work. So what I've told Jackson, for example, I didn't see Dave Bonzo here. I was thinking he might be here because I had this, and I got his approval to tell this quick story. Through my safety work at the Home Builders Association, I keep pretty good track of what's happening down here at the Home Builder Academy. They've been graduating, what did he say, four classes now already. I believe that's, I think he said about 50, no, it was higher than that. A high percentage that are actually going to work for the workforce, which is great. My example was, I found out through this safety interaction that Younger was actually hiring some of the students out of there that are now out on like flat work crews. But this one specific was somebody that had been in the construction industry before and then gotten out of it. And they saw this as an opportunity to go through the Home Builder Academy and get like a segue back into the industry. So this person had actually been like a foreman level position before. So Younger actually hired them as a trim foreman. So they actually have a Younger truck and they're going out there and going around the valley being a productive foreman today, right? Where 6 months ago before the Home Builder Academy opened up, who knows? But that's, you know, that's one more butt in the seat, right? Which is great. So my whole point is, and this is again my vision with Mike, is if somebody can go like that foreman who goes to work for Younger, if he sticks with Younger or he sticks with anybody in the industry for a year, maybe at the end of that year, we just send them through the RISE program for free. And if we can work it out that way, that's like the stewardship of the funds that we're going to be receiving. Like, I'm open to any kind of ideas like that. So I not only see this as not a conflict with any of those other entities, I see a lot of synergy here, right? So let's talk a little bit about the mission. So we equip construction industry leaders and their workforces with the resources to be efficient, effective, and successful. So I'm telling you right now, and I think most of you know me pretty well, like, I'm not going to do anything if I can't make sure that the end product of that is going to be efficient and effective. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's why we bake that into the mission. We bring the industry together in community to foster support and continual growth. So what we're going to be talking about here is a school where you could send your teams to, but it's not just a one and done. I'd love to build community here where not only is it you go through the program and you get the education of a 12-week program per se, but then we all know how life works, right? It's continually evolving. And if there are ways that we can continue to support the folks that that went through our program, we're going to do that. The vision: improve the collective professionalism of the residential construction industry. That's been my personal mission for about the last 15 years. When I became a senior level operator within a home building company, that's how I wanted to use my time. I'd already figured out how to build homes in the field myself. I was then in charge of a company that was building a ton of homes, 100 of homes. So I just tried to use my influence within the industry. And a lot of you would know me for safety reasons, right? Being a safety leader, maybe at the Home Builders Association, places like that. So I just tried to use my influence more broadly to empower. So improve the collective professionalism of the residential construction industry. And then the why now, right? So the why now specifically is, well, it's because I retired from my full-time gig, right? So I'm not out there as a VP of operations, working. I'm not out there as a VP of operations with that day job right now, so I have more bandwidth, right? And I sense this need, and the reason that I sense the need is because, like I said before, since I retired, now all of my clients are basically home builders and contractors, and I'm going to their organizations and working with their teams on some of the very things that we're going to talk about within our program now. I started having conversations, actually the genesis of this was I started having conversations with Jackson from the Home Builders Association because 100 years ago when I was a superintendent, like you could go to the Home Builders Association and go through some coursework that's going to look very similar to what we're talking about today and get a certificate. I did. I think Chad told me you still have your certification with Connie's signature on it, right? Which is pretty cool, right? And I, as a VP of operations, I needed that in the Home Builders Association about 2014 because we were coming out of the downturn, right? And we were growing as an organization. We were growing in people, growing in number of units, growing all of those things. And I needed resources. And so, started lobbying. It didn't end up happening through the Home Builders Association, so I built my own internal program in the organization that I was working at. But that took a lot of effort. That took a lot of my own personal time to put it together, and then the way that we executed it, it just took a lot of energy. And I would have really loved to have another resource like this. And so the conversation started with Jackson. I talked about maybe doing it as a consultant and building it for the HVAC. But what I told Jackson is I'm just going to go start talking to the industry and just see if there's an appetite, if anybody needs this. And through those conversations, I ended up with a very specific lunch with Mr. Willis. And then we just kind of said like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. We're both in our early 50s and we got, money in the bank and time on our hands. Let's go do something with the industry that we love. So, this is a for-profit deal that we're talking about here, but I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make sure that this industry is more professional than, and not that it's not professional right now, but I think we got some work that we could be doing. So, who do we serve? Who are our clients? Obviously, who's in the room right now? It's people who are running construction companies and people that are running home building organizations. It's really geared towards supervisor level folks from both the contractor side and the home builder side. Now, I have visions that in the future we'll even have a track for foremans. There's a ton of details that I haven't worked out about Spanish and other things, but I think that could also be a natural evolution. Anybody that spent any time with me knows that one of my tenets is like, I think foremans are the key to the game on the site for management, safety specifically, because the foreman's the guy who rarely leaves the job. And how that job goes is oftentimes how that foreman is leading that crew. So I think that's a vital element. I'm not there yet. That's why it says maybe coming soon or coming in the future, but that's an idea. Specifically around the home builder side, this is exactly what you could have gotten in the 90s or early 2000s at the Home Builders Association. It was geared for construction managers, specifically assistants, customer care. It's going to be like your newer folks in the industry typically, right? And like I said, when I built my program at my home building organization, 90% of the time we were getting young folks right out of college, sending them out to work on the job site. They knew how to build a house maybe on paper, right? But then you go out there and run into the fire, and I don't just mean when it's 115 degrees, I mean like the fire that goes on in our industry in November, right? Where you're dealing with customers, and you're dealing with contractors, and you're dealing with what happens on a site, and all the skill sets that go along with that. So here's how I see it, the how. So subject matter experts, that's one of the questions you're going to see in the survey is, and I'll bring up like the various topics. I mean, you can see them kind of listed out here, but I'll talk a little bit about that on one of the future slides. But so one of the things that we're doing right now is soliciting subject matter experts. So 100 years ago when I went through the Home Builders Association, it was basically people that came in and volunteered their time to speak on concrete or building science or anything else. So we are soliciting that type of help right now. It wouldn't be volunteer. You know, we'll pay, or again, I've also got visions where, you know, not to volunteer you, Mike, but you know, if you did volunteer to come in and do subject matter expert, right, you could just volunteer your money right back to the program and send one of these kids through, you know, a different track or what.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Right. So 2 basic tracks. My vision is like home building basics would be for, and not that if you're a contractor, you couldn't send your team through home builder basics if you wanted to, but I predominantly see home builder basics as where you'd send entry-level construction managers, assistants, customer care. And these are the type of topics. And again, 80-20. So this is Jeff and Mike's idea about what the coursework should look like. And then leadership fundamentals. This is a whole other track that, and again, like I'm working with like a really big masonry company right now. They hired me, I'm in there, I just did a presentation at 6 o'clock in the morning for 6 of their superintendents. And we're basically doing leadership fundamentals and teaching this group about leadership, about organization, time management, communication, all those fundamental skills for running a job site. And my idea is that home builder, that group that I talked about, project managers and assistants and such, would kind of go through both tracks. And I haven't worked out the logistics of this yet, but I'd love to see the contractors in the same room with the builders on that lower set, because I think there's just a richness that you get. I can remember 100 years ago doing my Home Builder Association time, and you showed up there and it was just, you know, like 12 different builders in the room with these different shirts, and it was the first kind of interaction I'd had with, you know, other companies, and I thought that was kind of cool. It just added to the experience. And how cool would it be if it was the, you know, the superintendents from the roofing company or the tile company sitting right next to the builders, and they're going through time or communication, right? Like, hey, look to the guy at your left and the one on your right. Because when you walk out this door and you go back on your job site, that's who you're calling on the phone. That's who's texting you. That's who has the problems, right? And so if you can have those kind of conversations proactively, you can work things out in advance, all that, or resolving conflict. So this is some ideas around the what or the how. So here are the subject matter. So Mr. Waschek's in the back of the room. So he's already volunteered to help be basically the building science element. And if you don't know who Darren Waschek is, you've probably been under a rock right here in the valley, right? So this is what we're trying to do, is get people on board that are, credible, have been around the industry for a long time, that can bring value to the program. And this is a pretty small list, right? It's, it's me, Darren. I mean, I didn't put Mike up there, but obviously Mike would be engineering. So we're looking for subject matter experts right now, again, on things like concrete and framing, and we'll continue to do our due diligence. But in the survey that I have, you're welcome to give feedback on, just think about this list, right? Like, is there something that's not on this list that should be there? Is there something on this list that's like, well, don't waste your time doing plan reading? That's probably a bad example, but things of that nature. So we're looking for your feedback. Okay, so now let me talk a little bit about the efficient and effective part of the equation. So go back to the mission statement where I said, there's no way I'm doing this unless I can make sure that the folks coming out of the program are better for having gone through it, right? For you spending your money to send them, for them taking their time away from their, we'll talk about the timing, but away from their job site briefly at the end, of any given day, but more specifically to do the work that it's going to take. Because my ideas about how this is going to work is at least a notch or two above. Essentially, if you showed up to each of the classes and you were engaged in intent, then you got a certificate at the end. And so what I want is just a little bit more intense than that. So again, haven't worked out all the details on this yet, but I really want to send out pre and post surveys. So I'm going to send surveys out to whoever you elect to go through the program. I want to send a survey to them specifically and just give themselves a self-assessment on, I haven't worked all that out yet, but 15-point checks, right, on a self-assessment. I also want the survey to go to that person's supervisor, and then I want that person to pick one other person that they want the survey to go to. I would prefer that, let's say it was a builder project manager, they picked like a superintendent from one of the contractors that they work with. And they would say, hey, hey, Bill, I'm going to be going through this program at the Home Builders Association. Would you do me a favor? Would you take 10 or 12 minutes and go through a survey for me and give me feedback on how I'm doing right now before I start this program? And then again, within, 30 days of graduating or getting your certificate, I want to survey all three again. Now, is that anecdotal and subjective? Yes, but it's more than doing nothing. It's better than just going through the program and kind of hoping and wishing, they come out the other side better. And so that's just my initial idea of how it's going to work. Now, there's other questions in the survey about this middle part, which is the curriculum. So again, when I went to the association version, it was basically instructor-led classroom content, little bit of participation during the meeting, but I've got ideas beyond that, which is like required reading outside of the coursework, case studies that we would review in the classroom setting itself, group discussions, which we did have that, I think, at the Home Builder Association version, and then, potentially even role play type things, quizzes, and then most specifically, and Mike and I weren't even on the same page in the beginning about what does it look like when you complete this work with a certification, or is it a pass-fail, things of that nature. I think we have kind of settled up on it will be a certification, and if you don't come and bring your game, there's a chance that you'll fail, right? And we'll have to work that out, after you've paid the money and somebody fails, we'll figure that part out. But anyway, we're just trying to set a high bar here because, again, go back to the original mission. I want to make sure people coming out the other end of this program are efficient and effective at what they're doing, and more so when they came in the front door. So this is how we're trying to get there. Okay, so tuition, but should be just a huge asterisk right here. I have no earthly idea. Like, I put these numbers up here. like I haven't ran the numbers on, you know, what it's going to take once we have the facility and all that. I just think this is probably like a ballpark and fair. So we'll see. But there's a very specific question in there about this. So please feel free to give your feedback on how you feel like that kind of lines up. Okay, where? So Q4. So I mean as early as October, I could have beta classes ready to go. I've already got, you know, thanks to Cindy and the Protex team, we've gotten their commitment to let us use they've got a great facility that we can host classes at as early as October. It's all just about getting the curriculum, getting the subject matter experts together. So we're working on that now. I'm going to have my ask for you here next. And then ultimately by the first quarter in the RISE facility. So I'm imagining like a storefront type of a situation down here off of the Broadway curve, somewhere in between Protex's office and the Home Builder Association Academy, right? So I'm just trying to come up with places where I figured our clients, you know, your teams are going to be coming from places like Surprise and Maricopa and Queen Creek. I mean, that's where they live, that's where they're working. That's about as central as I can figure. So Q1 classes. So Mike and I are marching down, I mean, as fast as, we're basically building the program as I'm giving you this presentation today, right? So securing the location, all of those kind of things. Work in progress, but we're full steam ahead. So basically enrolling for winter classes now. So here is my real ask of the group, outside of the original ask, which I'm asking for your feedback. As we talk through, you know, what works here, what doesn't, what's your feedback that would be more helpful, we'd love that. But as far as the commitment level, you know, I couldn't take on the whole world right now, right? If you had 10 people in your organization, like Jeff, I'd love to run them through that leadership and management thing like tomorrow, right? I couldn't do that because we won't be equipped for that. But what I'm really asking specifically is, would builders in the room or contractors in the room commit to sending 2 people through our October program and then 2 through our January? And then specifically now, I want to talk about who I'm asking for. So in one, I'd love to have like the ideal person that we've been talking about here, right? That maybe that new person out of college, couple of years on the job, maybe it's a superintendent that you have that's been with you for 5 years, but you think they could benefit from a little, you know, time management, organization, resolving problems, things of that nature, and you want to send them through that track. So that I would love to have one person from your organization who is that ideal kind of client. But then I'd love to have you send like one of your veterans through each time. One in October, then one again in January. Why? It goes back to the efficient and the effective part. I want to make sure that, and I want to gauge it 2 ways. I want that ideal person to go through the program and say, yeah, when I came out the other side of this thing, the stuff that you've been talking about for the last 15 weeks, that sunk in and I feel like I'm better equipped to do my job and get homes built. And I want them sitting right next to the person who's been doing this in the industry for years, who's maybe one of your better performers, and they're going to be giving not only, you know, their folks that they're in the class with good feedback, but we're going to be gaining feedback from that, from people that are actively building homes on the job site out there today. Again, is that a little bit selfish? Is that a little bit self-serving? Perhaps, but I'm not going to ask for that forever. I just want to do it at least the first 2 sessions. That way I'm getting active feedback about the curriculum, the content, the subject matter experts, and again, is this effective and efficient? In the future, this is where Mike and I are going. We hope to have some board positions that help us guide what we're doing. I'm looking for at least one contractor, one contractual. That's supposed to be a contractor. That guy right there is a contractor principal. A home builder executive, and then, again, this is my idea. I want to have like somebody that graduates from the program be a part of the board that helps guide what we're doing going forward. So again, just kind of future state and ideas about how things can be. Ultimately, like I've already had people ask me, and like I think if there was even a competitor in this space, it's somebody that's doing this virtually, right? They're doing webinars and but I think the problem with that is they're, like concrete designs from Texas or, like hurricane straps from California and all this other stuff that's not applicable in our specific market. So everything that we're going to do in our program is going to be geared specifically to what we're doing here in the Arizona market, let's just say. But in the future, we might be able to build this towards a more virtual platform. So I understand that at least this initial investment that I'm talking about doing, like the storefront building and all that, like that might be more than we need, but I think it is what we need in the very beginning. And it might be what we need for a longer term plan. But I'm going to at least start that way because I really want to regulate the effectiveness and the efficiency of what we're trying to do in the program itself. Let me see if that's back to Q&A. So I didn't end up putting it in the slide right here, but let's talk about or maybe my win slide went away. So the other part of win is like, what would it look like for somebody's commitment to show up and do this? And so it's basically like from 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. every other week for how many ever weeks we decide. It'll be whatever the curriculum shakes out to be. If you're a contractor and you're sending your management team or one of your supers through, it might be 8 courses, 16 weeks, right? With all of those other things that I mentioned, which is, required reading and case studies and all that other kind of thing. But essentially the commitment would be to make a trip from Queen Creek or Surprise once every 2 weeks down to a facility here on the Broadway curve and invest your 3 p.m. So you'd be investing letting them leave the job in order to be there by 3 o'clock and then stay till 4:30. And that's my commitment with Mike, is like I want to have people out the door by 4:30. So if you can beat any kind of traffic back to wherever you're heading, because nobody lives by the Broadway curve, right? That you'd get a fighting chance to get there. And then maybe you could listen to an audiobook on personal development on your drive home because it was required reading in the program. So sorry, my slide must have fell out on that piece, but that is the commitment that I'm asking for. You'll find a very specific question in the you'll find a very specific question within the survey about just that, which is the timing. Like, is that a fair commitment to ask of you as a builder or a contractor to commit to your team? Yeah, there you go, Mike. Yeah, you can pass those out if you want. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the presentation. If for any reason that you want to hit either me or Mike here after, we'll hang around and answer any questions one-on-one. Again, within the survey itself, I think all those flyers went around hopefully as well too. So if you couldn't QR that, again, our cell phones and emails are in that survey. Outside of the ask, which that is one of the questions in the survey, if I'm Lennar, would you send 2 people to the program? That's the questions I'm asking. So in addition to that, so the 2 real asks are your feedback on the program and like our 80%, right? So please give me your 20% to help make this program better, not just now, but like if you know anything about me, I'll just keep asking these questions until it gets more and more efficient or effective. And then the other is ultimately if you could commit to sending a couple of people through the program, we'll get the party started and get to work. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. Cool.